Blessed love and welcome to another edition of Things You Will Ignore in U.S. History with Coach Pete. Today we're going to do film study on Module 9 and 10. So let's break down the game film and see which questions we did well, which questions we can get better with. Alright, so without further ado, since iron sharpens iron, let's get at it. Alright, so when we go over our module assessments, what we'll be looking to do is we're going to be running a 2-3 defense. So we're going to look at 2 questions we did well on, and we're going to take a look at 3 questions we need to work on. If you look at the bottom left corner, you'll see that there's a plus there. So that means we did well on this question. Look up here to the top left corner. You can see the complexity of the question. This has an M, so that means it is moderate. The diagram below depicts important developments in the United States in the late 1920s. From this diagram, we notice that there is something that is missing. Well, which phrase best completes the diagram? If we look here at our choices, the most appropriate one is A, causes of the Great Depression, and you all did well with that one. Excellent job. Alright, so this question, as we look down here at the bottom, this is a high complexity question. So that means that it is going to require us to use the salt in our brain, which inference, what can we guess can be made from this table. Alright, so let's look at the table. It is a table of unemployment statistics. Alright, here you have year, you have population, you have labor force, you have unemployed, and you also have percentage of labor force. Now, why is this a high complexity question? Because it requires us to use the salt in our brain. We have to use some of the knowledge that we have and then apply it. What do we know happened in 1929 from what we've been covering? That's right, my beloveds, the Great Stock Market Crash, which led to the Great Depression. All right, what happens in around 1941? What got us out of the Great Depression? Was it the New Deal? No. Was it World War II? Yes. All right, so now that we know these things, better yet, now that we are thinking about the things that we know, let's take a look at our answer choices. A, the Supreme Court's decision had no effect on unemployment. Is there anything in this table dealing with the Supreme Court? Let's go ahead and X that one out using the salt in our brain. High unemployment did not end until the outbreak of World War II. Hold on for a second. Let's come back to that. The federal government was spending too much money during the New Deal. Do we see anything about money in here? All right, let's X that one out. So now we know that it can't be A. We know that it can't be C. Let's take a look at D. Passage of the Wagner Act, 1935, and other pro-labor laws greatly reduced unemployment. All right, 1935 it says. Let's take a look at 1935. There we see unemployed 10 million the next year, 9 million the next year, 7 million the next year, 10 million. This says greatly reduced unemployment. That's not what is occurring if we're looking at these numbers. Let's go ahead and X that one. So just by using the salt in our brain, we've X'd out every single choice except for B. But let's take a look at what B entails. It says high unemployment did not end until the outbreak of World War II. If we look at the unemployment rates here, 14.45% of the labor force, and then it drops down to 9. We see the unemployed numbers from 8,120,000 to 5,560,000. The correct answer is B. All right, we look down in the left corner, we see, once again, a minus, things we need to work on. So we didn't do too well on this one. Let's try to figure out why. Maybe it's because when we looked at that poster and we saw NRA, we were thinking National Rifle Association. So we were thinking about protecting our Second Amendment right, having our guns. But that's not what the NRA, dealing with the New Deal agency, was talking about. Remember from our study guide, NRA stands for National Recovery Administration. Well, what did they do? Created fair business practices. Fair business practices. So if we look at those answer choices, which one deals with fair business practices using the salt in our brain? Once again, high complexity question. We can see that the correct answer is B. All right, let's take a look in the right corner. We see a minus symbol, so that means this is a question that we didn't do as well as we would like to on. Let's take a look at how we can maybe make the adjustment and improve. We look down at the bottom under hide explanation. We see that it is another high complexity question. So that requires us to do what? Use the salt in our brain. Let's take a moment to look at those answer choices. All right, now let's use the salt in our brain and think back to the film study of our common assessment number 3. We had a question that dealt with how protectionist policies decreased international business. It was question number 2. This highlights the theme of the leading politicians. So the correct answer is C. Some blame the process of globalization for taking away jobs. Others felt that free trade between nations was necessary to expand opportunities. Well, all right. We made it to the last one. Now, if you remember, we said we're going to run a 2-3 defense. So we've started out with some positive, and then we went to some things we needed to work on. Then now we done made it to the end, and we're going to look down at the left corner, and we see the positive. We see we're going to end it on a good note. We started with something good. We're going to end with something good. Because it said the first will be last, and the last will be first. So the New Deal, it created millions of jobs and sponsored public work projects that reach most every country in the nation. That's the first sentence. So then if we look to our answer choices, it says, according to the text, what created millions of jobs? If we see choice A, we don't see that in the first sentence. If we look at choice B, we don't see it in the first sentence. Now if we look at C, we see the New Deal. We don't see the old deal. We don't see the future deal. We see the New Deal. We don't even need to look further. But let's just make sure. And we see D. Federal protection of bank deposits. Well, that ain't it. We go back to the first, cause the first will be last, and the last will be first. It didn't say the old deal. It said the New Deal. It didn't say the New Green Deal, but maybe it should though. It says the New Deal. So the answer is. So the answer is C. Thank you once again for tuning in to another episode of Things You Will Ignore in U.S. History with Coach Pete. This has been Film Study of Module 9 and 10. You know who I am. You know what I do. Bless and love.